Thursday, June 9th, 2016 at 7 p.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We're here for the purpose of the Communications Committee to discuss ongoing stormwater efforts between the governmental entities, the city, the parks, and the schools. Second on the agenda is public comment. Is there any public comment? I know that nobody signed up. However, is there anybody in the audience, anybody at all? Just identify yourselves and make your way to the microphone. We're going to keep it the same way we do public comment during our council meetings, which is we ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Out of the respect for the respect for the work we have to do here this evening, and also out of respect for others who may want to speak. If you get over 3 minutes, I might ask you to wrap it up. When you get to the microphone, we are being recorded, so we ask that you identify yourself by name, and address is optional. So I see at least one. Mr. Crumry, the microphone's yours.
Michael Crumry, 570 West Crockett. Thank you, Mayor Morley, for making these meetings public. The first public stormwater communication meeting was held exactly 11 months ago from today on July 9th, 2015. This meeting tonight is number 15. I, along with others, might not agree with some of the details with the Park District. However, I can say that I appreciate their consistent attendance to the stormwater communication meetings. Only on a few rare occasions has Executive Director Jim Rogers been unable to attend, and when done so, he has provided a fully informed representative to participate in the discussion. On the school district side, the May 23rd meeting was attended by Board of Education President Shannon Ebner. The April meeting was attended by District 205 Representative John McDonough. And the March meeting was attended by no one from District 205. This process is very frustrating, not knowing who will attend from the school district. Three different drafts of talking points I prepared, not knowing who might attend tonight. The last meeting was specifically scheduled for Wednesday, May 25th, to allow Superintendent Dave Moyer to attend. Yet he selected to be at York High School for a mathematics meeting. Monday, May 23rd was the last day of school held at York High School. But again, a mathematics meeting on Wednesday was more important to Superintendent Moyer. And yet again, his absence here tonight speaks volumes, as well as no representation from District 205 at all. Am I the only one using this microphone? I don't tend to do that at other meetings that I attend. When someone buys or sells a home in Elmhurst, the address and the sale price is listed in the local newspaper. This is public information. Websites allow entry of an address, and it provides back the real estate taxes for the home in Elmhurst. Again, this is public information. So how is it possible that Board of Education President Shannon Ebner, an elected official, can say the following comments at the last stormwater meeting at the 3950 mark? Quote, "This is not a place to negotiate. The negotiation should happen with the lawyers and Dave Moyer and Jim," meaning Jim Grabowski, city manager. Quote, "You don't negotiate in public." Well, last time I checked, my real estate taxes are directly paying for the, quote, public services of the Park District, the City of Elmhurst, and District 205.
Mr. Crumry, was there an issue with the microphone? I'm just asking because
this is part of my presentation.
I gotcha. Okay. Anyone else in the audience this evening who did not have an opportunity to sign up but wishes to address us? Ms. Sullivan?
Kathleen Sullivan. I'm just looking forward to an update on Golden Meadows to see where we're at, how close we are to, if we're going to be signing it or a target date for signing the agreement. I know it's very close between the two parties. And I'm looking forward to an update on the testing. I heard that it's going to be next week. Want to understand how firm that date is and things like that, just with regards to Golden Meadows. Looking forward to an update on York Commons as well, to see if that's all going smoothly. And was looking forward to an update on the schools, but seeing no one from the school board up there, I'm guessing that won't be forthcoming. Thanks.
Oh, Ms. Gatesman, please.
Julie Gatesman, 886 Parkside. I wasn't really going to talk tonight, but after watching the video from the last time, I was sick during the whole time watching it. I don't know. I can't get anybody to come out here to these meetings and to speak and to do all this stuff because every time I try to get them to come out, they're like, nothing's happening. Nothing's gonna happen. Nothing's gonna happen. And I argue with them and I plead with them and I'm like, something is gonna happen. We're getting close to Brian. We're getting so close. Come on out. Nothing's gonna happen. They laugh in my face and I'm like the only one still naive enough to believe that something will happen with Brian. It was the most simple project that we had that will help so many and still nothing. And it doesn't seem like anything's gonna happen, and it just gets really frustrating because I can't even get anybody to come out here because nobody believes it's gonna work. And after the last meeting, I'm starting to really doubt too. But that's it.
Okay, anyone else wish to address the committee at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on. We're going to go to our general updates. For the most part, with regard to a general update, it's springtime. We're having a little bit of rain, but the good news is I think we have 6 projects on the books. 6 projects actually started and hope to have 7 completed by the end of the year. Our website is what, Jim? ElmhurstStormwaterUpdate.org. ElmhurstStormwaterUpdate.org. We update that website. Not only does it have our regular city website, has a stormwater information and stormwater updates if we get hit with a storm, but if you're wanting to know about your specific project that's actually under construction, there's timelines available there. I'm not going to take the time to go over those now, but there are a lot of stormwater projects going on all over the city. We're going to talk about one of them here tonight, York Commons. The one over at the quarry, the Tree Streets one, is moving along, among others. So I encourage my general update would be to anybody who watches this, please go to our website to get a full update. Yes, Mr. Grabowski.
I misspoke. It's ElmhurstStormwaterPlan.org.
All right, let me see that. Let's get this right. ElmhurstStormwaterPlan.org. Sorry about that. That's why I checked with you. Okay, any other general update from anybody before we, oh, I'm sorry. One other thing. You will note, it's been noted by public comment, school district's not here. We received a letter from them 2 days ago? Yesterday. Received a letter yesterday that they would not be attending. We'll get into that under their update. Jim, you had a...
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know all the information is on the website, but I just wanted to give a very quick update on the projects. One project has been completed to date. That's the Webster Avenue project. It has functioned perfectly as designed in a couple of rain events. Took a little bit of water, but drained as designed. Tree Streets project is really going well. There'll be a lot of work going on here in the next couple months to ultimately get a pipe out into the quarry and allow what infrastructure work that has been done to put that online here in the next coming months. And then if you've been down the Salt Creek Greenway Trail, you'll see the very large sanitary sewer overflow reservoir that's been put in place and will be coming online with the Jackson lift station work that's being done. So really good there, and that helps over 1,100 homes in southwest Elmhurst from a sanitary sewer standpoint. In planning and projects that will be done by the end of this year will be York and 290, the improvements at Madison School, Yorkfield area, Geneva Avenue, where the city has purchased a number of homes and will be putting in detention in that area, and then also detention on Washington Street. So combining Washington Street and Madison School to be a significant improvement to the folks in that area as well. And something that we've been talking about in Public Works for quite some time is the infrastructure projects. We have had ongoing discussions with the county as it relates to our ability to ultimately put more water into the quarry. because that's the linchpin for us to be able to ultimately then do the increased size of the lift stations and the increased storm sewers throughout Southwest Elmhurst. So those things are moving forward. Obviously, when there's a lot of government entities, it takes a little bit of work, but things have gone so well with the Tree Streets project that we've got a good relationship, always have had a good relationship with DuPage County, and that follows through. And then clearly pending, Golden Meadows Park, we're going to talk about that, and then the number of other projects with the schools. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I think everybody knows Alderman Kennedy is chairman of the Public Works Committee, and pretty much 3/4 of every meeting that he holds is about stormwater. Real quick, a little bit of added information as it relates to the quarry and DuPage County. The idea there is to be able to pull water out of the creek before it gets into the southern part of Elmhurst. And if we pull enough water out of the creek, then we get permission from not only, I think, DuPage County, maybe the Army Corps of Engineers, to pull some water out of the south end of Elmhurst when it's experiencing some water problems. The idea there is that one of the lobes of the quarry, I think it's the west lobe, has a lot of clean, what we call clean landfill. So it has maybe some concrete and dirt and stuff, and it's all capped, and it has grass growing on it. Our proposal to the county is that we dig out some of that, create more volume, which allows us to pull a little more water out. So it's a long-term play. It's going to take a little while, but ultimately that will allow us to add improvements, as Alderman Kennedy said, to some of our lift stations that take water, stormwater, and dump into the creek. Maybe we can dump more and dump a little quicker, ultimately, when that happens. That's it for general updates. Let's just jump right in with the Park District, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim Rogers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Since the last committee meeting that the Park District was a part of, we've made a significant amount of progress working with staffs behind the scenes, and then I know Jim with the council and myself with the Park Board. Starting with your comments, we provided comments back to V3, our engineer provided comments back to Burke on May 3rd, the Tuesday after our last meeting. We are awaiting a formal response from Burke, but the city manager and I have had some discussions, and I believe we're trending in a positive way there. We had mentioned at the last meeting, April 28th, that we had some ideas for ways that we hoped could meet the needs of both of our entities, provide what the city needed from the infrastructure perspective, and also address some of the concerns the Park Board had from the usage and aesthetics of the park. Presented some ideas, which again, my indications I've gotten are that we're trending in a positive way on those and expecting something back, I think, from Burke in short order here, is my understanding. The other point on that was to be discussing construction schedule, and the city manager and I have also agreed that the construction schedule obviously being driven by what happens with the engineering, that's in play and in process as well, and those will kind of come together as engineering gets finalized. So that's moving ahead in a very positive way. I've continued to give those updates to the Park Board. So I guess maybe I'd stop and just ask if we want to have any discussion about your comments right now, or? Okay.
I was going to let City Manager Grabowski bring people up to speed from our side, from the city side, in terms of timing and what I know that there's been some very recent talks even today with regard to the our engineers.
Yes, as Director Rogers said, we've been working on the review portion of the project, and there were some comments that were addressed by our engineer to move that along as far as the actual project in the front yard, let's call it, portion. Regarding the pipe and the easement in the back, we've hit a little stumbling block on the easement and the pipe out, I'm sorry, the pipe in that goes under the railroad, and so we're working on that, but we anticipate finding an alternative location for that, which shouldn't hinder the timing of that. As Jim said, we're still moving forward as quickly as possible to get that out to bid and shovel in the ground.
So when you mention easements, obviously, we have to go through people, we have to go through someone's yard over on Crescent. If you, do we have, Howard, what do we got here? This is it? Okay. So to add a little color to what City Manager Grabowski said, is somewhere pick these homes here. And I say pick these homes here because that's what City Manager Grabowski was referring to. We're going to have to go under someone's private land and then go under the railroad and get here. So we have to clean this up in addition to the engineering. I think that our contract for the engineering, it is Park District land. I know that we're getting the easement for, and I think the contract that we signed, the IGA said that we do a engineering review at 65% and 95%, if that's correct, and I think we're at the cusp of that 95% to give people an idea how far along we are. And for the most part, the project looks like this, right? Yep. The valve's here, and we're going to come in through here. So that's really what we're talking about. Okay. Okay, Jim, did you have anything else on that?
No, not on your comments.
Anyone else?
I believe one of the questions was where the valve location and its orientation, has that been decided, and what's going on there?
Yes, we had some conversation back and forth about the valve location. Ultimately, it will be located in the front corner of that, which makes sense from an accessibility standpoint. And if you recall, in the discussions of the valve, there was a lot of concern over residents questioning whether the valve was open or closed. And so we, again, have gone back and forth a little bit on that. And what Jim was referring to earlier as far as a communication back from our engineer, as recently as yesterday and today, we had conversation regarding the orientation of it, and it'll be a sideways actuating valve instead of up and down, and then we'll have an indicator light as well, which will show whether the valve is open or closed. And then there are some screening issues that we need to address, but those are fairly small details.
So I know the original estimate was around 100,000, I believe, somewhere in that range. So has that number changed with the orientation change?
Our engineer's indicating that the sideways is a little bit more expensive, in the neighborhood of $10,000 for the sideways valve.
So I'll ask the question before I pass the microphone down. When it was an up and down valve versus a sideways valve, there's a big stick that sticks up. And when it's open, the stick's up. And everyone's driving by can see it. So if we turn the valve sideways and whatever actuates is either, parallel to the ground and no longer sticking up, how do people know? That was probably the number one thing that Burke said, besides his opinion it not being necessary. Number two was, every time it rains and someone gets water, they're going to say that valve didn't work. So I don't know if between the two groups, do we have a plan on that?
Yes, what we talked about is a light that would indicate open or closed, similar to what we had at the Jackson Lift Station previously.
Okay. Anything to add?
No, I'm just echoing that. In the letter that V3 had sent back, to Burke on May 3rd, we talked exactly about that. The notion at the time, what we had suggested was what's called a non-rising stem, so a stem that doesn't come up out of the ground to provide obstructions into the park that would stay below grade. And then we had suggested to provide visual inspection of the sluice gate operation from York Road, as desired by the city. A valve position indicator light could be mounted at that location, and we even provided some suggestions for that. So again, the engineers are working, I think, towards solutions that can be agreeable to both. We've not seen what the city manager described yet, but we're continuing those discussions.
Okay.
Just one other quick comment. Also, by doing the horizontal valve stem, it'll eliminate the big fence around that area. I think there was 130 or 150 linear feet of fence and so forth, so that should be a cost savings as part of that. So it'll be interesting to see what your net numbers are.
Right, and I think in Greg's letter, he suggested that we co-locate inside the dumpster enclosure. We're not so sure that that's the best idea just from usability and potential damage, so we're going to come back with something else that maybe indicates other screening.
Sure. And again, we're awaiting those responses.
Yeah, the last thing we want is some garbage truck anywhere near that, bumping into it accidentally and none of us finding out.
Right,
so.
which, and we had suggested ways to work around that as well.
Just one quick question, and it revolves around the maintenance of it. Is there an additional cost, any additional cost for it being the other direction, change the other direction?
I don't think so. Howard is shaking his head no, but we've not heard that from our engineer.
Okay, any other comments from either group on your comments? Okay, Mr. Rogers, you want to bring us up to speed on Golden Meadows?
Sorry.
Hold on.
So knowing what we know now, do you have a feel for when we'd start the project? I mean, we got to take care of this easement piece and get out to bid. Do we have a feel for when we'd have a shovel in the ground?
What I've asked Howard to do is to look into a way that we can go out to bid without having the easement in place. If that gives us a comfort level, and certainly the city council will make that call if we're comfortable enough. But if we can negotiate the easement, it's all timed on that. Would you say a month, Howard, from bid?
From bid, right, I would think in August we would definitely be under construction.
So in August, Howard thinks we would be able to go out for bid on that.
No, construction.
I'm sorry, construction, excuse me.
Follow up, knowing that we could be starting in August, is that a date that you guys have been considering, and where does that fall in your thoughts to when the project could start?
We've been suggesting well, obviously, the initial concept was to do the work before the pool season, and then knowing that, as that became apparent, that wasn't going to happen, our suggestion to the city, or what we had stated, was that we wanted to see the work start no sooner than August 15th, which is the Monday. Pool closes on August 14th, and so this should fit into that just fine.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we'll plan for that day, August 15th, to get started. Yes.
Okay. All right, any other comments on your comments?
Not from us.
Okay, Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours for Golden Meadows.
Sure. The city manager and I, along with the city and district attorneys, have had a number of meetings since the last communication meeting. Those have been very fruitful. We've been back and forth, I'm going to say close to probably half a dozen times with different drafts of the document, have reached what we believe staff to staff is a consensus on virtually all items. Last night, well actually at the last two park board meetings, I've given the park board updates to that effect. Last night I presented them with the current draft version of the IGA, excuse me, as well as 2 pages of kind of executive summary highlights of that. So the board is fully aware and is in sort of the nodding of heads concurrence with those terms. Excuse me, in addition, Jim had suggested at one of our negotiating meetings that because we've reached consensus on nearly all the points, Jim has suggested that we reach out to DNR now prior to the agreement being brought to the elected boards or completely finalized in order to identify any stumbling blocks in our proposed process, meaning the process that we're looking to take together to do this. I concurred with that, shared that with the park board, who also provided their concurrence, and actually just yesterday reached out to the director of the IDNR, Wayne Rosenthal, about setting up a conference call that Jim and I can be on to start to review this with him. So didn't hear anything back yet today, but I'll reach out again tomorrow. So we are moving ahead. And my understanding, I don't want to steal Jim's thunder, but I think he might be taking same to committee next week. And again, I don't want to step out, but that's my understanding. So lots of progress, very close. Now the idea being, let's go to DNR and find out if there's any, where they say, oh, you can't do this or change your order or something like that, rather than having the 2 elected boards approve something and then go to DNR and they say, oh, you should have tweaked that. So the idea being, let's get the concepts in front of them now.
Thank you, Jim. As Jim said, this agreement has been in front of the Public Works Committee once, updated as we've gone along, twice, I think, with the most recent version. Nothing substantially different from when Jim, myself, and the attorneys met. but it will be in front of the Public Works Committee again Monday, just as an update. As Jim stated, we both agreed going to the DNR now is a good idea so that they can get a look at it, give us any comments that they may have. In addition to that, I think the last time we were here, we talked about the environmental being done now so that when the appraisals are done, they know exactly what they're dealing with. To that end, we did complete a phase 1 of the environmental process, and phase 2 is moving forward this week, I think, next week, okay. And that'll be digging 3 holes out there near the railroad tracks to really see if there's anything out there. And that really concludes my comments.
Any comments or questions? I had a comment, and I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah, so the biggest thing really that's kind of hanging out there, I think in principle we agree with almost everything. The thing that's hanging out there before formal approval of an IGA by either board is really kind of a blessing by the IDNR. There's no reason for us to take something all the way through our individual processes and vote as elected officials and make anything final when the DNR might say, change this paragraph, change that paragraph. I think we're going to see how far the committee feels comfortable taking it without IDNR input, but rest assured, as soon as we get input from the IDNR, we'll move forward as fast as possible. The gist of the agreement, really what we're asking the IDNR, correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen, what we're asking the IDNR to do is allow us to strike an agreement for the sale of this property. It's technically a conversion, so it means that this property has some IDNR restrictions on it. Park District holds it. To get rid of that property, either use it or sell it, you have to go find other property. And what we're really asking the IDNR to do is allow us to have this transaction, allow us to purchase the property from them, allow them to commit to convert, but not have to figure out, have them go all the way through the process, find the land, negotiate, purchase it, et cetera. We want to, that's still going to happen, but what's most important to us is putting a shovel in the ground. So it's a conversion, and we're asking the IDNR to allow us to buy the land and and accept a commitment from Parks. Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, just one thing that I'd like to make sure we ask during that preliminary meeting, and that is, what's their timeline as it relates to, if we approve it, the park board approves it, how long is it going to take them to do their final approval so that we're not dragging our feet because, you know, we've got a delay at the state level?
Sounds good. Okay, any other comments or questions?
Nope, not from us.
All right, anything on the IGA? It's really between you two guys,
I
right?
think we've covered.
Well, it's gone through the park board a couple of times, and I think they're comfortable with the way it looks, and then Monday night, our Public Works Committee will be looking at it, and I think Chairman Kennedy and I and Howard need to talk about the possibility of a draft report being generated so that it's ready to go to City Council at any time.
Okay, I think that's it. Before we go on to school portion, is there anything else from Park District?
There's not.
Okay, bear with us before we commit, before we set our next date. There's a couple things we've got to clean up over here. All right, so as I mentioned during the general update, the school district is not here this evening. I'm going to give a quick update, and then if anybody wants to add any additional comments. Our primary conversation with the schools over the past 8 or 9 months has been getting Bryan gravel lot. It's the largest project identified in the Burke report, either from on the school district side or the Park District side. It's 23, let me see. This is what we're talking about, let me just, yeah, okay. Before I jump into this part, let me just ask real quick. Jim, when is the, what's the status of Madison? Let me ask you for an update on Madison before we jump in.
We have sent those plans to V3. They're also working on the school's behalf to review them. They did give us some comments back. I believe those have all been addressed, and so that is moving forward. Howard, when will we bidding that?
We're doing some minor tweaking. We hope to get that out in the next several weeks.
The next couple weeks, we'll have that on the street for bid.
So as far as approval from school district? Sorry, as far as school district approval or any other additional information we need from them for Madison? Nothing. Okay. So going out to bid, and that project's going to move forward. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you just to highlight the section of what it would be, Adams? Yeah. Just for everybody's clarification, this drawing here is not completely accurate to the way the project is going to be done. In next slide has it?
Okay, it's farther away, but you can
Okay. So on the south end of that project, we're actually going to be going into the street, and we're going to be creating more detention in that area. The resident that lives on the corner of Washington and Adams is going to have some driveway reconfiguration. So the end result is he'll be pulling into his driveway, not on Adams, but on Washington, and it gives us more volume to store water in that area. So good work by the folks here at City Hall to figure out how to make this project better, and just wanted to highlight that to everyone as well.
Yeah, and it can't be said enough. I'm glad you said it, Alderman Kennedy. This right here is Adams. Here's a close-up shot of it. And there's two, for the length of Adams, there's two houses here. This house here on Bryan and Adams, their driveway dumps out onto Bryan, so they're not directly affected. This house here actually accesses their house on Adams. We can increase the project by 20%, going from 5 acre-feet to 6 acre-feet by expanding into property that the city already owns and making this entire thing a little bit bigger. And this homeowner here, my hat's off to them. All they asked us to do is pay to reconfigure their driveway, and I think that's quite impressive. So I'm very happy that they're willing to do that.
Can you just repeat the increase, so everybody makes sure they understand how much increase?
It goes from 5 acre-feet to 6 acre-feet, so 325,000 cubic feet of water, additional water is pulled out of the stormwater system in an event. So, and to the folks it directly affects on Washington, that's a pretty big deal. Okay. Now we can get into Bryan Gravel Lot and School District as it relates to tonight's meeting. So yesterday, City Manager Grabowski received a letter, and let me back up just a second. So 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with the school district here, and the focus was Bryan Junior High. And the biggest issue we had at that time is the school district had what I'll call an ask. So they had sent us an IGA. The current status of the IGA up until yesterday, the current status of the IGA was that we swap land. We get their land at Bryan. We get the land at Bryan. We give them what land they've requested over by the Public Works garage that we currently have. We pay them for the difference in the value. They did an appraisal, so without going to contract, the difference in the value is about $650,000. So they were asking for us to swap land, us pay the difference of $650,000. The use of the land over at the parking, the Public Works garage would have to be brought up to code for building purposes, so that would cost us, the city, an additional approximately $350,000 to pave it. But then there was an ask that was sent to us in an email or a letter, I guess it was an email from Dave Moyer, and specifically it said, define city contributions to meet district's long-term needs in terms of intergovernmental assistance to obtain a place which to relocate the facilities and financial contribution costs toward that relocation. Am I reading that right? In addition, define scope of long-term need essentially in terms of facilities uses which require relocation from Bryan School grounds if board determines the field area for such facility uses is in need for expansion. Basically, it was an ask from the city that should the school district remodel or redevelop or tear down and rebuild Bryan, they asked us for some sort of an amount, undefined. So at the last meeting, President Ebner came and she said, well, that would be for relocating the softball fields, sorry, relocating the softball fields. And we kind of questioned back and forth, and we thought maybe, okay, that means if they build one way, we just help them build softball fields over there. And then City Manager Grabowski asked the question, well, does that mean we have to go buy land to replace and relocate their softball fields? And at the time, President Ebner said, yes, that was the case, which I'm not sure if she was speculating or not, but after the meeting, so that was the end of the meeting, that was the status of the IGA. It had this hole in it, and we were trying to figure out what it meant relocating soccer fields. So after that meeting, City Manager Grabowski and I had a follow-up meeting, and we said, hey, let's just send an email over to the school district for clarification, because Public Works Committee, Jim Kennedy's committee, had reviewed the IGA, but it has this hole in it. What's the final ask from the Park District? So an email was, school district, sorry, gentlemen. So an email was sent, and we got a response from the school district today, yesterday, June 8th, and it changed. It's good that we asked for a clarification, and ultimately we'll be asking for this clarification as part of an IGA rewrite from them. But that brings us up to speed up until June 8th. So they sent us a letter that had, that responded to the email we sent them. The first paragraph of the letter says that they actually don't want softball field allocation. They want a one-time lump sum payment of $350,000. Now, I haven't had an opportunity. Ms. Ebner did call me around 4:30, 5 o'clock tonight. I missed her phone call. She left me a message saying that she couldn't be here tonight, but I wanted to ask some details on the $350,000. But right now, that's what the letter says. So instead of a relocation of soccer fields, they want a lump sum payment of $350,000. The other, next paragraph in the letter, we had asked them, hey, can you define when we can talk about Jackson and York High School projects, because there's stormwater projects that involve those two schools. And they basically said, let's get the Madison and Bryan agreements done, and then we'll identify future projects for discussion. So we were looking for a timeline. We don't have that yet. And then the final paragraph of the letter we received yesterday says that the school district will no longer be attending these meetings. That they want the meetings to be between Jim and Dave and the lawyers. So that's my summary of what they said. I will say, and that's the extent. I haven't talked to them. I do have a meeting tomorrow morning with President Shannon Ebner and John McDonough, who aren't here. I'll be asking them some of these questions. So I don't have answers. I'm just giving you the facts as it relates to the letter that I received. That's the status of the Bryan gravel lot. I think the hole in the IGA is this $350,000. I know that immediately after this letter was received, City Manager Grabowski sent a letter or sent an email over to Dave Moyer saying, okay, let's meet with the attorneys, and can you fill in that portion of the IGA? And once that's filled in, then we can go to committee and talk about what we think of their final offer. And that's the current status of the school district, and if anybody else wants to chime in, they're more than welcome to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight something for everyone, and that is, as we looked at this project and we've, the cost of, as we look at this, the land difference in the swap of the land is about $650,000. We would need to do, as a city, improvements to the lot over on on Riverside Drive for $300. With the lump sum, add another $350. So grand total for that effort before we even put a shovel in the ground for the project is $1.3 million. So just to put that in perspective, obviously we as a council and we as a committee have to look at that and understand what that all means and how it enters in with the overall project. I want to say something more, but I'm going to let Mark speak because he has his hand up.
I have to state that, especially because this is my area, I'm extremely disappointed to see that the school district has made a decision that they no longer want to attend these meetings. These meetings have been productive, they've been helpful for the community to understand what's been going on with the different projects, and for them to take a step back and say now that they don't want to come to these meetings and be involved with this discussion is extraordinarily disappointing to me, and I would like and hope that they would reconsider what they've decided to do here so that we can continue to move these forward, and the other projects as well, because we have Jackson, that's another area in my ward that I'm concerned with, as well as the York High School project. So I would hope that the school board would reconsider their not coming to these meetings anymore.
Thanks. At our last meeting also, I asked if President Ebner would reconsider our original request, and Mayor Morley mentioned that the $600,000 difference comes from the swap of land. But I think that it's important to note when we first brought this topic up, we wanted to swap what is stored on that land, not the land itself. We didn't want to purchase and sell. When that happens, the school cuts away part of their parcel, and I think for us to go back to the original request, it benefits the school in the short term and in the long term. So short term, what we originally proposed, we would be able to store their materials and their vehicles in our garage. Long term, it allows them to have greater green space or area that doesn't have a building on it to be calculated if in the future they do want to build out on Bryan School, as the county requires a certain amount of green space if there is a possibility to build out, and if not, the requirement to store stormwater. So I understand without a representative here, this letter is just saying that they are proceeding with the purchase, not the lease or sharing of land and storage. But, go ahead, purchase and sell. I'm not crazy about being part of a decision where the school is cutting out part of its property and selling it off to the city. So I hopefully we can, there still may be a possibility to proceed with a lease, but I'm not optimistic.
Okay. That's really it as it relates to schools. I know that City Manager Grabowski has requested a meeting and proposed a couple of dates with Dave Moyer, and he's waiting for a response back. My expectation at that, Jim, would be, assuming that this $350,000 is the only hole that's in the IGA, that you and Dave and the two lawyers would have a meeting, and then ultimately a quote finalized version of the IGA will go to Public Works. That's correct. And then, as you said, Jim, the Public Works Committee has to consider everything that is put in front of them. Well, my phone's dead. What's the timing on that? Just in terms of...
If we can get a meeting next week, which I'm asking for, we could possibly talk details at the June 20th, I'm sorry, the June 27th Public Works Committee meeting. We should be able to have a draft ready for that committee meeting. That's our target.
June what?
June 27th.
Okay. Okay. So for anybody in the audience or anybody watching, as far as it relates to Bryan and next steps, we have to, this is a letter, this is good that they put something in writing, but we need it in the IGA. Then Public Works Committee needs to review that IGA. June 27th is probably the most likely meeting that IGA would be reviewed and potentially go to council after that. Okay? Any other comments as it relates to schools?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to highlight one other thing as it relates to finances with 205. And I think they sometimes forget the fact that they owe us $1.2 million for the project at York High School. I would ask that you continue to invite them to the meetings because it's their responsibility to be here. I know they don't want to be here. That's too bad because there's people in the audience here, there's people at home who continue to have issues with flooding, and we need their help. And we need Julie Gatesman and all of her neighbors and everybody else to stand up and say to the school board, we need your help. Plain and simple, we're not asking for a cure for cancer. We're asking to do something in some green space to help some people. It's very simple. It's pathetic that they're not here. They need to be here. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? All right, other business, any other business? Anything we missed? I think we can go well, we'll set the meeting with one of the groups that's here and invite the other group. Jim, I know you and Jim have been whispering over here. Does June 30th work?
We basically kind of said, assuming that we've gotten somewhere with DNR, so it's something.
Yeah, assuming that we have, we're kind of on hold without DNR comment. So. That's why we got 14 of us, right? We will make it, right? Okay, pending, and we'll know a week out, let's say, pending feedback from IDNR. June 30th, at 7 o'clock will be the next meeting. Any additional information needed between the groups here, Jims? No. Okay. Looks like we're making progress. I'm really happy with the progress we're making. And hopefully we'll get some positive news and understanding out of IDNR, and they'll appreciate the work that we've done, and they'll give us an approval quickly.
Last thing, we don't have other business, but I'm going to throw this out there. It's something we've talked about before in Public Works, and would like to just ask that the two gyms begin to talk about it, and that is related to the Prairie Path Crossing, and see if we can begin as two entities to start to work together on potentially relocating the crossing at York to help from a safety and a line of sight and everything that goes into that. So I know it's been on the back burner. It's been talked about before, but what's that? So, yeah, South Street and York there. So I don't expect you guys to talk about it, but I would, if we can begin to look
I guess
at
I just want to clarify for the audience, everyone watched too, that proposed concept has nothing to do with stormwater, am I? No, I'm not, I want to make sure that the audience understands that we're not talking about stormwater. That's a completely different topic, different issue.
That is the definition of other business.
Okay, which I assume will not, okay, I'm just going to stop.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments before we wrap it up? We'll adjourn. It's 7:50. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for coming.